Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure having you with us today. Well, we have one more panel, and I think this is, well, Jeff said we saved the best for last. Is that the truth? This certainly should be one of our more, shall we say, lively panel discussions, and we're going to talk about keeping Pennsylvania red. Our moderator for this panel is Jeff Lord, longtime friend of the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. He's spoken to us many, many times. You see Jeff Lord all the time on Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham's program. He, of course, was the assistant political director at the Reagan White House, author of numerous books, writes for the American Spectator. Jeff Lord, there's a lot we could say, but at this point, I want to turn it over to you and let you and our all-star panel talk about keeping Pennsylvania red here as we head to the 2020 presidential election. Jeff?
Thank you, Loman. Let me start by introducing our panel. We'll start at the far end here with Bernie Comfort. Bernie is the vice chair of the Pennsylvania Republican Party, and I might add an excellent one. She is also the chair of the 2020 Trump campaign in Pennsylvania. She has had her work as executive director of the Ann Anstein Excellence in Public Service series. Good Lord, I remember Ann Anstein so well. She was tremendous. And as the manager of that and the Doty London series in Arizona, she was a manager for the executive leadership programs. So she's got a whole network of people in Pennsylvania. She served as a commissioner for the Pennsylvania Commission for Women. And I didn't know this, Bernie, you serve as a state committee member from Lehigh County, where you also serve as a local committee woman for the Lehigh County Republican Committee. And I must tell you, I went to high school in Allentown, where I was chair of the Lehigh County Teenage Republicans.
I did not know that. Where did you go to high school?
Deer High School, class of '69.
All right. I went to Northwestern, a little more north in the district.
So I'm glad to know that. And next up, we have the great Vernon Robinson, who was the principal at Robinson Stratavision Consulting, LLC, which helped clients build large interactive organizations. His greatest professional achievement, and I would add so far, because you got a ways to go, was directing the campaign to draft Ben Carson for president. He has also raised $26 million for conservative causes and candidates. He's a 1977 graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy, served in 15th Air Force, in which his Tuskegee Airman father served 35 years. He got into politics to expand educational opportunity through charter schools and K-12 scholarships. He served as vice chairman of public safety as a city councilman in Winston-Salem, North Carolina for 8 years. He's married with 3 grown kids, as a member of the American Legion. And as a author myself, I want to make sure that I hold up Vernon's book, Coming Home, How Black Americans Will Re-elect Trump. And we will have a conversation about this in a minute. And then sitting next to me is the inimitable Rose Tennant. Rose is a nationally syndicated radio host, political pundit, author, and speaker. For a very long time, she was the co-host of the Quinn and Rose talk show in Pittsburgh. You will see Rose on occasion. You'll hear Rose as she substitutes for Sean Hannity when he's flitting about and daring to take a vacation. She has done so many things here. She's got a book, Thanking Our Soldiers, a collection of inspirational stories demonstrating the generosity, kindness, and basic goodwill towards those who serve. And she's also, I didn't know this, Rose, co-authored an award-winning children's book, yeah. Wilson Won't Be Bullied.
No, he won't.
So with that, let me get to the questions, and I will start at the far end there with you, Bernie. In presidential campaigns, and we have all been involved in them, there's 2 things going on simultaneously. You have the national campaign, which is directing a national message, et cetera. But then you have 50 different state campaigns. Sure. And every state campaign has a message that's slightly different than another state. What's being said in Pennsylvania is not necessarily being said in Wyoming or Alabama. So talk to us a little bit about the Trump campaign message for Pennsylvania.
Well, you know, the campaign here is alive and well, and I agree with the chairman. Wherever you go, you see the excitement for this president. and for all that he's done and all that he's doing to bring America back again after this COVID crisis. But our message is simple. This president made promises and he kept promises. And, you know, you need to look no further than his record for the first 3.5 years. Economic growth was amazing. I mean, unemployment at record levels across all demographics. Deregulation. He got the economy moving. And he did what he said he was going to do in terms of judicial appointments as well. Almost 250 judicial appointments at all levels of the court. So this president, he made promises, and refreshingly in Washington, D.C., he kept them. And so that's what we're talking about in Pennsylvania. And we're on the ground working really hard. We've made over 1 million door contacts. I mean, Joe Biden's nowhere to be found, his campaign's nowhere to be found, and we're talking to the voters.
Right.
You know, we're knocking on the doors, over 1 million door knocks, over 7 million voter contacts.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Well, this pays off. A while back, just out of sheer geeky curiosity, I took a look, I just picked several Pennsylvania counties at random and took a look at the returns for Donald Trump in 2016 and compared them to Mitt Romney's in 2008, in 2012, John McCain's in 2008, and George W. Bush in 2004 and 2000. And in every single case, Donald Trump got 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 7,000 votes more, which indicates there was and is a real enthusiasm for him here.
Oh, he's the
state.
populist president. You know, he's speaking directly to the forgotten man and woman, and they know that, and they're rallying behind him. And I would argue you have less of a silent majority this time around.
Yes, yes. And one other thing I'll add is that he will be here in Harrisburg tonight.
He will.
At 7 o'clock. As I understand it, he's announcing his Supreme Court nominee at 5 o'clock.
From the White House,
and from the White House, and he will be right here at 7 o'clock. So we will all be interested to hear what he has to say. Vernon, let me ask you this question. I mean, this has totally fascinated me. I've done some writing on this myself. How did black voters become Democrats?
Well, Jeff, as you know, black voters were solidly Republican. The Republican Party was founded to abolish African slavery in the United States and did so with the help of bayonets from Pennsylvania, about 1 million bayonets, and passed the 14th, 15th, and the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments over Democrat opposition. And for 71 years, black voters were Republican. Unfortunately, starting with Herbert Hoover, who decided that he wanted a lily-white Republican Party in the South, resegregated the White House after Harding and Coolidge had desegregated the Wilson White House. He refused to meet with prominent black individuals. He didn't do any of the things that Republicans had done since Andrew Johnson. So that started a thing. At the same time, you had 6 million black citizens leave the South, and when they left the South, they became voters in the North, Midwest, and West. And FDR's folks said, hey, you know, we really can't sell the Democratic Party because these guys knew the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party in the South was the party of slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, and the Klan. So they hit on, let's do what the Republicans used to do, a charm offensive that meets with and gets pictures with prominent black individuals. Eleanor would invite the wives of prominent black individuals or black women who are prominent in their own right to tea. And so Roosevelt gets about 30-something% of the black vote in 32, but by 36, he got 76% of the black vote. And finally, in 48, a majority of black voters identified as Democrats. So the folks who think it was a switch in the South, which didn't happen, or that it happened because of Johnson's welfare policies in the 60s, are late by about 20 to 30 years. Then we had the 40s, 50s, and 60s where Republicans in general and conservatives in particular dropped the ball on enforcing black voting rights and really drove the political and spiritual leadership of the black community into the arms of the far left, because there weren't any conservatives dying on freedom rides or in earthen dams in Neshoba County. It was the far left. My mother, by the way, was trying to register voters in the 40s, and it's a great story in the book. And she was doing it for the National Association of Negro Students, which was a communist front. And she didn't know it was a communist front. She's not a communist, she's a liberal Democrat. But the guy who was the leader became the editor of the Daily Worker. So conservatives didn't support civil rights, the Civil Rights Act of '64 for a variety of reasons, beyond the scope of our little panel here. But in so doing, trying to prevent the expansion of federal power, they inadvertently forced 13% of the political and spiritual leadership of the population into the arms of the left, thus facilitating the great expansion of the Leviathan state, where we see the federal government basically does anything it wants to anyone it wants at any time it wants. So we had the blowout in '64, where Goldwater didn't get a whole lot of black votes, even though he had the best, arguably the best civil rights record of any presidential candidate to the date. And he lost to Johnson, who used the N-word on a regular basis so often that his daughter felt free to use it in referring to the staff as in, "Where's my N?" Then Republican consultants started telling the party, its candidates and allies, life, guns, whatever, don't communicate with black voters, it just will upset them. And so we have this period of 50 years where the GOP doesn't communicate with black voters, and meanwhile the Democrats are running terrorist ads. Ads like vote Democratic, or another black church will be bombed, conflating Dynamite Bob Chambliss, who destroyed the 16th Street Baptist Church and missed killing Condoleezza Rice by 30 minutes. You know, the impact of those ads over time is that black voters associate positive things with the Democrat Party and negative things with the Republican Party, irrespective of the position. So if you ask black voters which party is best able to defend the innocent unborn, most black voters, Kellyanne Conway did a poll before she became counsel of the president, 69% of black voters said Democrats are best able to defend the innocent unborn, and that's because saving babies is good. Democrats are good, ergo, Democrats must be saving babies. Now, if you think about it, the Democrats aren't going to say, oh, by the way, we fund Planned Parenthood, who was set up to kill off black folks. Only 1% of black voters watch Fox News, and the Republican Party isn't saying anything. So the good news is that the president's achievements in life, in school choice, in jobs, more jobs than there are people to fill, lens, expanding wealth, raising wages, increased minority entrepreneurship, securing the border, defending the Second Amendment. You know, the folks that are saying we're going to defund the police are the same folks who want your guns, so I'd be concerned. No police and no guns. And finally, criminal justice reform creates the opportunity to turn FDR's strategy on its head, to launch a charm offensive based on policy successes and get 20% of the black vote in the swing states, thus assuring the Democrats become a regional party, no longer able to compete nationally. A lot of folks think you have to get 30 or 40 or 50. You don't have to do that. A Democrat, Joe Biden, or the Harris-Biden administration, as they both referred to it last week, in order to win, have to get a 90% of the black vote and a 65% turnout. Hillary got one, she didn't get the other. Joe's not going to get either. Right now, Rasmussen, last Friday, a week ago, said it's a 46-46 race in Pennsylvania, and Biden is only getting 66% of the black vote. Trump's getting 27. Those are Death Star numbers for the Democratic Party. They cannot survive as a national entity if they give up 27% of the black vote. So that's how black voters became Democrats, and it's how the GOP, although the party has failed, and hopefully we'll talk about that, they're still trying to find that marginal white voter someplace that didn't vote in 2016. There aren't any more white voters in Pennsylvania. If you don't get some black voters to deal with the fact you're getting slaughtered in the suburbs, you're going to lose this state. So I hope somebody stops doing that and starts contacting black voters, starts spending resources. If you have a chance to talk to your local unit, the local chairman, or the state chairman, ask him, how many hours volunteer work are you knocking on black doors? Because if the answer is 0, that's the wrong answer. How many dollars are you going to spend on urban contemporary radio in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh? I'm spending this week, $31,000. Unfortunately, that is more money than the Republican Party of Pennsylvania has spent in 50 years on urban contemporary radio. No one has ever made a sale without asking for the order. The Republican Party of Pennsylvania and the other 49 states and the RNC need to follow the president's lead and ask for the order and make the sale.
Well said, and I think we'll come back to some of this in a minute, but I just want to go to Rose. And Rose, I know that like Bernie, you have been all over Pennsylvania.
I have.
Tirelessly.
I am tired. I am very tired.
What is it that you are seeing? What's your take on what's out there and on the ground?
That's a good question, and I'm really excited about what I've been seeing. I'm wearing two different hats right now. I took a leave from radio, and I was glad to do so. I was offered the position of state finance director for Pennsylvania with Trump victory. So I happily took that. And then I'm also on the advisory board for Women for Trump. So in those two capacities, I've traveled quite a bit since June, really, nonstop. And what I'm finding, in the 2016 election, I had anecdotal evidence of a win for Trump. And that was because I was seeing, I would take the same route to work every day. I've been doing radio for 20 years in the same city, taking that same route. And where I had seen a lot of Obama signs in many of the yards on that way to work, suddenly in 2016, I was seeing Trump signs.
Right.
And they weren't just the store-bought ones or the ones you would get. They were so desperate to let everyone know their support for Trump. They were handmade signs, taped to windows. They were handmade signs that were bolted to 2x4s in their front yard. I mean, it was so exciting to see this. And I thought, and then I was getting a lot of phone calls from Democrats who didn't want to give my producer their name because they didn't want others in the area to know that they were supporting Donald Trump. So that was my anecdotal evidence, and I understand that that's not scientific proof, but I feel that this time around I've got more anecdotal evidence. It's not quite the same, but I can tell you that as a Women for Trump advisory board member and speaking to women all across the state, they are turning out in great numbers. The media would have you believe that women aren't supporting this president. That is not at all true. They are so excited, and I'm going to tell you why. Women, and I know men care about this too, but there's something about us, the nurturing part, and I know Bernie feels the same way. She's such a great mom, loves her daughter so much, would do anything for her. That's how we are as women and as moms. And when we think about the safety of this country, the safety for our children and their future, we think about who best to protect them. And right now, the women are telling me across the state of Pennsylvania that is Donald Trump.
Yes.
Now, in addition to that, I've talked to small business owners over the state. I have had business owners tell me that while they have always been Democrats, because they cannot conduct business right now, there was a woman in particular who has a salon and she couldn't do facials, but that's what she does. So for months now, she hasn't been doing facials. She's not making any money. And she said to me, how do I go back to that party? How do I go back to them? For the first time ever, she and so many other business owners will be voting Republican. First time ever.
Right.
So then more evidence, in my opinion, is law enforcement. I've done a lot of events. When Pence, our Vice President Pence has been here, a lot with cops for Trump. And talking to law enforcement, I have heard, well, you know what, Jeffrey, just the other day, Donald Trump was in Pittsburgh. And in the front row, we had 20 or 30 sheriffs from the surrounding counties. Remember that?
40,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, they said that there were at least 40 that they knew of that supported the president. Many of those were actually Democrats, and they are endorsing the president, and they are voting for the president.
Wow.
Law enforcement across the state have told me that they know who has their back, and it is not Harris Biden. It is Donald Trump. And they believe, of course they believe that. Why wouldn't they believe that? So if your law enforcement believes that that is your best bet, that they can best protect you because of our current president, then how do we, as citizens of this great state, feel safe if we vote otherwise, if we're not voting for Trump? And there are so many people across the state from so many different walks of life who are supporting him, strongly supporting him, enthusiastically supporting him. And Bernie said, someone said something about we are not the silent majority any longer. And Bernie, that's so true, because we just cannot stand by any longer.
Right.
And you're seeing this and the enthusiasm and the fervor. And I believe, based on all of that, that we will not only have a win in Pennsylvania, but I believe that our win is going to be bigger and greater than it was in 2016. I really do.
Well, that's great. That's great. It's great. And I have my own sign story from 2016, which I think is typical of, well, when you hear of the way the media operates in a bubble. The Halloween weekend before the 2016 election, it was a Saturday, I did not have to be on CNN. So I said to my then 90-something-year-old mom, I'm going to put you in the car and we're going to go out in the country down Route 15 here to the fruit stand and get a pumpkin. So off we go, and I'm beginning to notice there are Trump signs absolutely everywhere, hand-painted on the side of a barn and all this kind of thing. I start counting, over 100. I count Hillary signs, 1. Okay, so now shift to Monday, and I'm in New York to be on with Anderson Cooper and my pals there who were Democrats, Paul Begala from the Clinton era and Van Jones. I tell this story on the air. They looked at me like I had lost my mind. Jeff, the polling data, the polling data, the polling data. Yep. And I said, you know, what I'm trying to communicate to you is something is happening on the ground. I'm living there. I'm seeing this, you know, in living color. But the disconnect between, you know, the media bubble, the New York, Washington corridor, that sort of thing, and what was happening in America, you know, itself was just stunning to me.
And you're seeing it now. People are waiting hours in line to hear from this president and this vice president.
Yes.
You're seeing it again. You're seeing it with the homemade signs. You're seeing it everywhere. The enthusiasm. I mean, signs don't vote. I've always been pragmatic about that.
Yeah.
But they certainly do show a level of interest, which we don't always have in this country.
There's a difference, you know, every political party has party workers out there who put signs like in the middle of a highway. There's a difference between that and a sign on somebody's front
agree.
Lawn.
Exactly.
Right.
About
absolutely.
1.7 votes difference.
There you go, Vern. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you, Vernon, to get back to a race issue, I have often thought, and I've written a lot about this, the Democratic Party supported slavery. They supported segregation. And what they were really doing in the day was identifying the Democratic Party. You know, if you were in the South, you had to be a Democrat. In other words, the philosophy was matched to race. So now here we are all these years later, and I think they still do this. The difference is they've transferred it to Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, et cetera, and even women, frankly. Mm-hmm. And the automatic assumption is, if you're Black, if you're Hispanic, if you're a woman, and I would say in today's world, if you're gay, you are supposed to be a liberal. And if you're not, they're coming for you.
Just as Joe Biden.
I well remember I was in the Bush 41 administration when Thurgood Marshall resigned his seat on the Supreme Court, and he was, of course, the first African American. And the call went up from people on the left immediately, well, this is the Black seat on the court, and you've got to fill it. Well, so President Bush said okay, and nominated Clarence Thomas, and they went ballistic. I mean, what are your thoughts on this kind of thing?
Well, you know, Joe got in a lot of trouble when he said, if you are having to think between me and Trump, then you're not really Black. And the founder of Black Entertainment Television, Robert Johnson, just had this stunning rebuke saying that Biden was an arrogant white politician who ought to spend the rest of the campaign apologizing to every Black voter in the country for saying that the descendants of slaves were not Black unless they voted for him. And the Black woman who runs the largest Black Republican club probably in the South, in Charlotte, Lisa Matthews, said, somebody asked her, did you go to the Black Lives Matter rally? She said, no, I'm not Joe Biden Black. So,
That's interesting.
You know, the Democrats have problems because they have a very unstable constituency. Grover's been on at this program in the past, and he says that we're in the Leave Us Alone coalition, and it's a very stable coalition. You know, you don't mess with my children, I don't mess with your guns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Democrats have a predator coalition that has to eat something, and when times are thin, they start eating each other. So their problem is that, for instance, they feminized the Democratic Party to the point that young black and Hispanic males are saying, you know, I don't want that much estrogen. You know, they had the only male speaker I think they had besides Joe, and I think it's great that the Democrats didn't force him to wear a dress up there to take the nomination with some guy who wears dresses. Well, that's not where folks are, and that has serious ramifications for the long-term stability of the Democrat coalition when black and Hispanic males are bailing on them, possibly as you know, as high as 31% of black males. You know, I was going door to door. You know, I fell from my lofty position running the draft committee to the point I was knocking on doors for the American Renewal Coalition, and they were doing people of faith. So they're knocking on a whole lot of black doors. And you know, Republicans don't knock on black doors. So, of course, the labor folks and the Democrat Party folks who were knocking on doors thought I was a Democrat. You know, those black guys knocking on doors, must be a Democrat. So I said, hey, here's some water. One of them, I asked him, well, how's it going? He says, well, you know, folks don't like Trump, but they don't like Hillary either. And during that 6-7 weeks, I had only seen 15 Hillary signs in black neighborhoods. And I said, Hillary's in trouble because there's nothing special about the water in North Carolina. If she's in trouble here, she's in trouble in Florida, she's in trouble in Pennsylvania, she's in trouble a number of places. And right now, Joe is underperforming Hillary with black voters. You know, the school choice issue. You know, the problem that the Democrats have, even though they do the race thing, is that their policy agenda is inimical to a large percentage, more than 10% of the black vote. And again, your viewers and the party leaders watching, 10%. If you take 11%, the Democrats are in life support. If you take 12, they're going to lose. So you have a shot. And on the life issue, where about half of black babies are killed in this country in abortion, 21 million since Roe v. Wade, which is larger than the black population in the United States in 1960. More than 10% of black voters want to stop America's hidden Holocaust. School choice, you know, I'm a school choice warrior. I got into politics for school choice. I always thought it was great policy. Didn't see any political benefit that the Republicans got until Florida in 2018, where the black Democrat nominee says, I am going to end the school choice programs in Florida. Wow. The scholarships, the charter schools, the whole 9 yards, and pay off his teacher union buddies. 100,000 black women said, no, you're not, and voted for DeSantis. Wow. That was 3 times his margin of victory. Ron DeSantis is the luckiest man in North America because he didn't do anything to get the black vote other than say, I will not end the school choice programs and we'll expand them. So on that issue, on marriage, on a whole, you know, on having transgendered men in women's sports. I mean, there's a lot of black girls who are not going to go to college if you allow men to compete in women's track, because they will lose and they won't get the scholarships. The men will get the scholarships. So on all of those issues, culturally, the Democratic Party is out of touch. There are a lot more black folks as a possession. Twice the black population is represented in the military. And the Democrats hate the military. I mean, they just, in fact, they are going to challenge every overseas military ballot that is cast in Pennsylvania because they know that they're not going to get those votes, and they're going to try to get them in Pennsylvania and every other state like they always do. They're going to try to challenge each of those ballots. So the Democratic coalition with regard to blacks and Hispanics is unstable in the long term. And it's just the GOP needs to get off the bench and ask for the order. We have a great president's performance, achievements as and there are 2 folks. I don't want to use up all the time.
That's all right.
2 folks.
We have time.
One who was Regina in New York, who called in and said, I don't like Trump and I don't like Biden. I don't have a presidential candidate. the Reginas of this world, young millennials who aren't going to vote, may save the republic. The other young person the Democrat has to worry about is the waitress in South Georgia, LaShonda, who said to some workers, "I'm supporting the president because he works for all Americans, even black folk, 92% of whom didn't vote for him."
Right.
Even though he got 8% of the black vote, probably got 20% in Michigan, but he busted his butt on a wide range of policy issues that delivered for black folks, unlike Obama even thought of. You know, the reality in this country is that black folks were worse off at the end of 8 years of Obama's presidency than it was at the beginning.
Ironic, yeah.
That's it.
Bernie, let's switch from race to guns. I saw the other day, and actually our friend Sean Hannity was talking about this on his show, that sales of guns in Pennsylvania have skyrocketed.
Right.
Tell me what you think that means in terms of the election and Second Amendment issues and all this. I mean, is that something that is a sort of telltale sign out there?
I mean, I think Second Amendment issues are always important to the conservative base and to the Republican Party. Of course, we stand up for our constitutional amendment and rights. I do think what you're seeing now, because of the rioting, and you know, this is not peaceful protesting. And Rose mentioned my daughter, and I have to tell you, trying to educate a 10-year-old over the last 6 months about what's going on in this world is really an enlightening experience. And trying to say to her that peaceful protesting is not throwing a brick through the window of some poor, hardworking business owner in Center City, Philly, you know, and destroying it. So I think because law and order, as Rose has said, is front and center, and because people, quite frankly, have never seen this. Well, not for many decades. We haven't seen it. Let's say it that way. We haven't seen this kind of thing for many decades. And nobody would think that this kind of rioting or, you know, destructive behavior and dangerous, violent behavior could be in their suburb or their backyard in Lancaster County.
Right.
And so with all of this, all that said, and this whole defund the police movement from the left and from the Harris-Biden campaign, what you're seeing is people wanting to make sure they're exercising their right to protect themselves.
Right.
So it's not surprising to me, Jeffrey. It's guns and it's ammunition too that you know people are you know looking to get and having a hard time.
It amazed me in terms of Lancaster, and I went to Franklin Marshall in Lancaster, to hear people say to people on the left that they're going to defund the police and they want to have social workers and everything. And I said to somebody the other day, can you imagine if a social worker had answered the call, that domestic violence call, and this guy came charging out with a knife, which is captured on film. I said, what we'd have at this point is a dead social worker.
Right.
I mean, you know, this is just not.
Well, and there is a way to protest and exercise your right to free speech, but that doesn't give you the right to hurt someone else.
Right.
And so we've never stood for that in this democracy. And so I think people are reacting to it. And I think that suburban women and suburban voters will react to that as well. And they see the president out front leading. And that's one of the differences. They see the president out front leading and working hard for this country. And all kidding aside, Joe Biden, and the other question, you know, people are having this last week, Kamala Harris, where's she been on the campaign trail as well? I mean, nobody is seeing them out and talking to the American people. And that's why this president won in 2016, because he was willing to put himself out there for the American people. And he's doing it again.
Rose, let me ask you this question. I have so many questions and so little time.
That clock is very daunting.
Yeah, I know, it's right there.
But today at 5 o'clock, as we understand, the president is going to nominate, at least we're being led to believe, Amy Coney Barrett for the Supreme Court of the United States. And she is a conservative woman. Oh, no.
Wow.
And she's a Catholic.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. And they've already started to go after her. What do you, and I'll ask this of all of you, what do you think the impact of this is going to be on the election itself?
I think for many conservatives will be quite happy that he's made the choice that he has, if it is indeed Ms. Barrett. But I think overall what we're looking for as a nation is the preservation of our Constitution.
Right.
And we so very much want to know that someone has that in mind, no matter how they vote, no matter what they do, and whatever they think, that our Constitution is foremost in their mind. Because right now, we are in a battle for liberty, a greater battle than we've ever been in this country, to preserve our liberty, to preserve the freedom that has been bestowed upon us through that magnificent document. So when we hear that he's making the kind of choices that we would like him to make as people who support this president, as conservatives, we are thrilled with this particular choice. More important than that, we need to know that that Constitution will be preserved, that it is understood, and that liberty that we have been promised will continue. And I think when I talk to people across the state, that's one of the things I hear about the most, is they're worried because right now we've been so challenged in that area.
Right.
Right now, our freedoms have been taken away from us. When you consider what people had fled when they came to this country, it was tyrannical rule. They were fleeing from someone who was telling them how to worship, whether they could worship, how to work, what they could do, and that is tyrannical rule. And we find ourselves in that very same position right here, right now, particularly in this state of Pennsylvania. So we have become very wearisome, very, very tired of being told how to conduct our lives, how to conduct business. And I think when we see that he is making choices like he has, I think we feel safer, we feel better, and we feel more confident going forward in the future.
Right. Vernon, in the Black community, will this nomination have any particular impact one way or another?
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate the president, if indeed it is Amy Coney Barrett, because that is the best trade in the history of the Supreme Court. And I'm not sure what the reception. There are a lot of black folks buying guns these days because the social disruption is happening in a lot of black neighborhoods around the country. The women who want to kill their children or grandchildren are already voting against the president. So the abortion issue is not in play here. What is in play is the gun issue for Democrats who like guns a lot and like hunting a lot and like defending their families a lot in swing states. So, Ruth Bader Ginsburg may have elected 7 or 8 Republican Senate candidates who are in trouble and sealed the election for the president on the gun issue, not on the life issue. The last point that I wanted to make is that what's going to happen is there are a lot of women who will see the Democrats just trash Judge Barrett on live and living color right up to the run up to the election. And it's not going to be very good for the Democrats. It's going to be awful for them. And so the combination of the gun rights that are at stake and the Democrats beating the stuffings out of this nominee are going to both mitigate well or recommend well the president and the Senate candidates, and probably don't have to have a vote. And there's no reason why you should force Collins and Corey to cast a vote, or McSally or any of those guys cast a vote before the election. The lame duck session's fine. Right. Can confirm and go about our business and get the best trade in the history of the United States Supreme Court.
I must say I had to laugh when I saw the president the other day thanking Harry Reid. Because for our audience, if you're not familiar, Harry Reid, as Senate Majority Leader, dispensed with the filibuster for federal judicial nominations. You only need 51 votes. And guess who has 51 votes for this nominee? So I think that's very interesting. Do you have any more thoughts on that, Bernie?
I do. I think that, in fact, if she is the nominee, I think it'll be a very positive push for the president. And look, every Democrat, including Justice Ginsburg, has said the presidency is 4 years. The president, this is his or her job. Right. It's the Senate's job to do this, to fill these vacancies. What we're seeing, I agree with Rose, that what we're seeing is, from the right side, it's a preservation of the Constitution. From the left, they're already talking about how they're going to stack this court and what they're going to do if they get their way. So I think that this is a really positive opportunity. I also agree with Vernon. If they treat this esteemed professional the way they treated Brett Kavanaugh or anything like that. It did not work then. You don't win elections, as the chairman said, from a point of hatred.
Right.
You win by providing a vision. And so I think it can make a difference.
Well, you know, when I was in the Reagan White House, and I'm not a lawyer, I wound up working on 5 Supreme Court nominations.
Oh, wow.
One of them was Robert Bork. And I have to tell you, we were totally unprepared for this. We had never seen what became the Borking of Robert Bork, you know, making his last name into a verb and all this kind of thing. And now this is
Standard
what.
operating.
And what?
Standard operating.
Yes, it's standing operating procedure for Democrats when a Republican president puts a nominee up. I mean, Mrs. Alito fled the hearing room. She was in tears, absolute tears, of the way they were treating her husband. And yet Republicans, we didn't do this with Elena Kagan, we didn't do it with any of the other nominees. This is only, and I can tell you, there's all this vast network of liberal pressure groups that have come together. And in the Bork episode, I have a column coming out today in which I said, you know, I remember vividly sitting in my office and reading this mammoth briefing book that they gave those of us involved in the confirmation process. And, you know, it had all of his decisions, all of Bork's decisions, his speeches, his articles, everything you could possibly imagine. And suddenly it came to me, the book is worthless. Why? Because we had to deal with Gregory Peck. Gregory Peck, the famous movie actor, was a liberal, and he did the voiceover for the first television commercial that attacked the Supreme Court justice nominee, and it's been downhill ever since. So one question in 1 minute, Rose, that we've got left, I just want to ask, your media hat. Conservative media didn't exist during the Bork episode.
Right.
Just in general, whether it's Supreme Court nominations or presidential election, what difference do you think conservative media, by which I mean Fox, Rush, Sean,
Right.
Mark Levin, the American Spectator, all these online sites, what do you think that impact that has?
Oh, it has had a tremendous impact, no doubt, and it continues to do so. I think that people had become so fed up and didn't have a voice out there. And we finally have that voice through conservative talk, whether it's radio or TV. So it's had a tremendous impact. It will continue to have a tremendous impact. There will always be a place. If you think about it, those liberal shows that have come and gone, so quickly they fizzle out, is because they're not talking about those things that need to be talked about.
Right.
And yet, conservative talk radio, conservative television continues to thrive in this environment. And it's had a great impact. And for those of you who are worried about this election, do not worry. We've got this. We've got this. We really have.
All right, thank you very much, panel. Thank you, everybody. And Lohman, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. And thanks to everyone on the panel for doing a great job to bring to an end the 2020 Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. Before we go, just a couple of quick words. We mentioned, and we all know, that unfortunately we're sitting here in a ballroom without attendees. But the ballroom hasn't exactly been empty. It took an incredible amount of technology and advanced effort to put all these pieces together and make them work. So I would like to extend our appreciation to all those who are here in this ballroom on our tech crew. And if you could see, we have computers lined up the whole way along the ballroom. We have cameras lined up everywhere. Certainly, Scott Davis has been handling our website and our technology and social media for a long time. Grant Lenker, I knew I was going to do that, Graham. Graham Lenker, who is with us at the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Graham took care of all of our advanced video work. We have Nate Oakley and all the folks from Central Penn Productions, who for many years have been here at the Radisson handling our audio and video. Thanks to all of you. And of course, we extend our deep appreciation to all the folks here from the Pennsylvania Cable Network who have brought our conference to you live. All these folks have gotten together for an incredible amount of technology that made a virtual Pennsylvania Leadership Conference possible. And while we're appreciative of everybody's efforts, one thing we do want to do in 2021 is to be back with you in person. And we're hopeful that you will save the date, April 16th and 17th, 2021, for the 2021 Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. We'll have Jesse Waters here as our dinner speaker, Jason Chaffetz as our luncheon speaker. We look forward to having all of you back here in the ballroom at the Radisson Penn Harris next year. And with that, on behalf of the Board of Directors and everyone at the Pennsylvania Leadership Council, I thank you for tuning in to the 2020 Pennsylvania Leadership Conference, and we'll look forward to seeing you in 2021. Have a great afternoon.